All I have to say is really, Mini Mike, on episode 50, you decided to act up. Hi, go to the intro card. Welcome back to the Miniature Mike Monologue. Guys, did you know that whenever I say go to the intro card, I instinctually take a pause? Because I'm like, woo, it's happening real time, and it's not. It's the editor in me. Anywho, hi, welcome to episode 51. That's amazing. I think continuing on after reaching a big milestone that you set for yourself is almost more important than hitting the milestone. And that is because I am vigilant about remaining committed to my disciplines. So it makes me very happy that I am recording episode 51 early on in the week after posting episode 50. I've been a little behind on my posting schedule because I have been processing what has not been going on in my life and trying to take that to the Lord and be like, dude, I literally am doing what you have asked me, and I am doing everything I can to continue to let praise be the first thing that flows from my lips. But I really, simply, irrefutably just need some dadgum money. Anywho, that will be a story for another time. Obviously, as you've seen by the thumbnail today, we are talking about how I approach confrontation as generally, I would say by nurture. I'm not so sure as if by nature. I am generally, I would say by nurture, a non-confrontational person. And this is my continuation of the people pleaser to boundary baddie kind of mini series on the podcast, because I felt like it didn't make sense to just egg on the things that I had already talked about in there. I'll have to go back and watch it to see if I want to explain further on some things. But I feel like this was a fresh take on the same kind of ideas, and something that I think I had a little bit more value, experience, and information to add to that conversation, because I think confrontation is misframed. It is ill represented and has a very notorious reputation for being negative, Nancy, Debbie Downer, terrible, hard, scary, right? I understand that. I feel that. And I like everyone else, I am almost certain when they were a child, used to think that all skills displayed by any adult, including confrontation, were innate skills, meaning that they were born with that, they had always had that, they had always been like that, and I therefore could not learn to have that skill because, well, I was naive in life experience to come to understand that most things that adults exhibit are learned, most if not all. And so, after realizing that confrontational skills are not only not a permanent part of the adult person that I first saw demonstrate them, and the person that I'm thinking about in my mind right now is my mother, but just anybody in general. But the figure that sticks out in my mind and that I'm going to be talking about in this episode is my mom. Once I learned that it was not a permanent part of that person, I was like, oh, okay, so I can make a decision about how I want to do this kind of confrontation thing when I have to stand up for myself. And so I would say that my life experience with confrontation is relatively new because my mother, she didn't play about me, right? And what I mean by that is if you said anything slightly sideways, even a hint of helter-skelter in your tone or the way that you looked at me, to me, before you finished your sentence, she was in your face, replacing me where I was standing. You're no longer speaking to me. I no longer exist. You have angered my mother, and you are now going to deal with her because you decided to say something to me, right? She literally did that this morning. I'm 23. She did that this morning, okay? So I didn't really have to do any confronting. I didn't really have to do any confronting when I was growing up because if you said something funny, even if my mom wasn't there, because in that hypothetical situation, which is not hypothetical, it happened all the time. But in that hypothetical situation, if you said something funny to me, my mother wasn't there, I did what I knew how to do. I left, went home, told my mother, and you were hearing about it within the next 45 seconds. It didn't matter if it was 8 p.m., if it was 12 a.m., you would be hearing from Corey. I have the right to say, you will be hearing from my Corey. There's no hearing from my Lord. You will be hearing from my Corey, because just don't. And so I developed this natural kind of tentativeness around being in any sort of conflict and telling my mother as I got older, because I was like, she is going to kill them. Like, I just thought to myself, bad. This is bad. What they did wasn't right. Okay. I didn't like it. I said what I needed to say. My feelings are hurt. Yeah. I understood, even though I didn't really comprehend live, but I understood, like, in my subconscious, that it would be okay. Life would go on. I would be fine. And I would sometimes hold information about stuff that was happening to me from my mother as I got older, because I'm like, she is going to ruin my life because she's going to kill this person and go to jail. And then I'm going to be a widow because she had not a widow, an orphan, because she had primary custody of me. And I was like, this is not a good idea. So then I would do that. And then I eventually would tell her, and she would be more upset because I had been sitting on the information for a couple of days. And that is just a sidebar. But my general experience with confrontation was literally none. And so when I was going into my teenage years, I started to feel subconsciously that, oh, this expectation, this pressure, this reality of me having to handle conflict with people or situations that inflict it in my life, the way that it has been handled is not sustainable. I am going to have to start taking on the responsibility that my mother has bared for my entire existence. And that frightened me, not because I couldn't do conflict or because I couldn't handle confrontation, because what was really happening is that I didn't know that conflict or confrontation was such a big scope of experiences, that conflict is often, it's like always happening. It's like our most engaged form of interaction as humans, I think. But sometimes we don't even recognize it because we think it's negative, but it's actually positive. It's like, oh, I thought we were meeting at 6. No, we're meeting at 5:30. That's conflict. That's confrontation. It's immediately resolved. We move on, but we don't think about it like that because humans have an inclination for drama. And so when there's an opportunity to blow a situation out of proportion, and somebody who is a hurt person has the ability to make some people feel their wrath or see something that in them or get attention attracted to them, sometimes we take conflict and blow it up because we know it will get eyes on us and maybe we'll feel validated or something like that. I'm not saying I ever did that, because I am the opposite of that person. If it is not clear by the title of my podcast, that was never me, but I've seen it happen, and it happens all the time. The point is, conflict is consistently happening around us. We just don't frame the regular, more lesser, mundane parts of it as conflict. We are all like, at least this is my experience and the sentiment, conflict is only the big bad wolf, racist Karen interactions. You said this about my wife, like the Will Smith smack in the face on live television. Like, that is unfortunately the poster child for conflict, at least in my experience. And it's so natural happening around us all the time that we don't realize we have already figured out. I mean, not even for us. I feel like God does that for us naturally because he knows who we are. He knows our personalities, what makes us tick. We are able to find ways to aid ourselves in communicating around and through the ways and gifts that God has given us naturally without even thinking about it. But then we get some experience and it makes us think about it. You know what I'm saying? I really felt this pressure, one, because I was like, I had no concept of all the ways in which I had already handled conflict, even the negative ones. Like, I had a lot of teammate drama. I've always had a lot of teammate drama, and it is my least favorite experience on planet Earth. But I have had tons and tons and tons of teammate drama since I started playing volleyball. I'm not surprised by that. It pisses me off, but it makes a lot of sense contextually for my person, what I carry internally as a Christ follower, internally also as like just the natural gift and skill that I have. And then externally, the things that I exhibit aggravate people. I understand that. That doesn't make the teammate drama any more desirable or understandable. But there were so many things that I handled that when I got to college and I felt overwhelmed by the change in stage, the pressure to see what God had said in me come to life and it not matching up with my reality. And I was just like, I feel like I've never handled a conflict in my life. And then my mom would bring up a scenario, well removed from the situation that we're talking about, when I'm just venting to her and telling her like, I can't, like, I just feel so overwhelmed. Like when I was really struggling with anxiety, she would bring it up in a moment that has nothing to do with that and be like, you don't remember what happened like your 17th year? And I would be like, what are you talking about? And she'd be like, this, and this. And you said this, and this. And it was done. And I was like, what? And then something else would come up and she was like, oh yeah. And don't you remember when you were 16, you did this? And then when you were 18, you did this. And then when you were a senior, you did this. And I was like, hold on. I'm fighting with myself about something that I've already exhibited without hesitation. I am able to do to take care of myself. What is the big old holdup right now? And I've never thought about it. I think I might have said this. It definitely was like a little more spiritual than it was physical. My ability to feel like I could stand up for myself, but also physically in the place that I was at the University of Portland. The amount of physical oppression that was coming from my teammates and coaches, not all of them, most of them, by not being willing to help me, by standing up for the values that they said that they wanted, was so prevalent. And like when I process emotions that are that deep, that painful, and that constant, my brain is just kind of like this, and my inner person is just kind of like, get me out. And I think that I used to think my natural reaction was, in terms of fight or flight, it was flight. But I think it's fight. Now that I'm thinking back on all of these scenarios that my mom would tell me about, like when I was younger, when I handled conflict with teammates or people that I thought were my friends, like without thinking, I was like, I'm done with this. You know, like you did wrong. I don't have to take it. Yes, I accept your apology. No, we're not friends. Like that's how simple I was doing it. And I was fighting myself to be like, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? And it's like, well, it's hard to do anything when everyone who is surrounding you is like, we hate you. But they will never say those words because then I would have something to claim. I could create a case. I could do whatever. But you know that that's what they mean and that's what they're thinking. And they're doing it with their actions and the things that they're also not doing. So it's all of these very under the radar things that are completely covert, that are very oppressive. And you can't really pinpoint unless somebody else was in those spaces and places with you, seeing those same kinds of interactions. And those people were there able to do those things and they weren't, or they weren't in a position to do something of executive authority about it. Or when I took it to the people of executive authority, they were like, right, yeah, that's terrible. I knew that. Everybody knows that. A lot of people know that. Why aren't you doing something about it? You know what I'm saying? And so to be almost like I wasn't gaslit because everybody knew what was happening. I kept telling them what was happening. I kept telling them what I was going to do about it. And I kept telling them it was wrong. But to be, even in an attempt to be gaslit, is like 4 months on end. Oh, I feel so bad for 18-year-old me. Like, I really wish I could go give her a hug and tell her, like, no, girl, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And you don't even need to overthink whether or not you can handle this. Because first of all, God fights your battles for you. And second of all, yes, it's already been handled. And also, yes, you know how to handle it. You know what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make about confrontation is that we make it bigger than life, and it actually is just life. It's just the things that we have to say to people to communicate about ourselves in order to make sure that our life goes smoothly and their life goes smoothly. It's not anything bigger than, oh, excuse me, I need to get by you. I need to get this oatmeal. Oh, yes, yeah, excuse me. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes that goes like, oh, okay, excuse me, I need to get this oatmeal. And you just get a side eye and they move their cart and you're like, oh, okay. Right. And then, okay, excuse me, I just need to grab this oatmeal. And you get a, can you wait? Listen, listen. That is like the 3 levels, very basic, because obviously everything is extremely nuanced in our lives and in our experiences. But all of that is the same thing, confrontation. All of those things can be handled in the exact same way by you, even though the response was not reciprocated in a way that you would have liked or in the same manner that you dished it out. And sometimes it is. And if it's like ugly to ugly, it creates those big lash out scenarios that everyone's like, look at this, let me record it. You stop it. Okay. Anyways, my point is, I think that we don't give, this is how I think about it. I think we don't give God enough credit for creating us with all the things we need in order to handle this life that He's put us in. Even after our ancestors, Adam and Eve, chose to be separated from God, He still continues to gift us the tools to do the things that naturally happen every single day. And conflict or confrontation is one of them. And oftentimes it takes a reality jolting situation to remind us that we have always been capable, because we were made in the image of Christ, of handling the things that come at us, even when it seems like we can't. And if we feel that way, our God is an ever-present help, a high priest that we can touch and we can go to Him. He also says that He fights our battles and that we are in alignment with Him, victorious in everything that we enter into. So all of these things I am processing as my sense of awareness of what my scope of responsibility is about to be expanded to. And I am panicking because the way that my mother handled confrontation, I was unwilling to participate in. It was completely dogmatic, extremely domineering, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts. She was going to say what needed to be said in whatever way needed to be said it for you to understand you will never step to my kid again, right? And so I wasn't going to do that. I couldn't do that. And I used to think that my mom doing that, she had always been like that. Like that is who she was. But now that I'm older, I'm like, she definitely had to learn that. Because honestly, I don't think either of my parents are confrontational people by nature or by nurture, at least in the way that we frame it, like the notorious BIG, bad confrontation, everyone screaming, yelling, slurs, bad, just terrible, ugly things being said. My mom was never at that extreme, but she was always going to win any interaction when it came to me. And I thought, that's who she was. She had always been like that. And she was going to forever be like that about any and everything. But as I got older and I left my home and I realized that my mom is also a young woman who has now gone from young adolescent to young adult to now she is my mother, who I am looking at through a lens of my life because she's already done this. And that means that she's had life experiences that were probably very difficult for her. And then she had a child and then had to raise said child by herself and had to make decisions that were not only for the best of her, but for the best of her child. And for a Black educated single woman, nobody wants you to do what is best for you in America. I am not crying, woe is me. I am not saying, oh Lord, I'm not saying that. I am saying America was built on racist principles and they still permeate culture today. So the hardened, conflict-oriented version of my mother that I would see anytime I was afflicted was only a representation from her to me that I was worth fighting for. And my mother and I have had this conversation many times because once I finally settled on that reality, I was like, this is not who she is. My mother has done things that make her uncomfortable, that she doesn't like in confrontation in her regular life, things that don't have to do with me also, because she wanted me to know that I am not worth whatever anybody wants to put out that day. I am worth what God sent his son to do for all of humanity, which was to die in the position that I should have taken as a sinner and cleanse me of all that skin so I could be akin to Christ in likeness of how God views me. And she was the embodiment of that, specifically when it came to me being attacked or afflicted or treated different ways. And that did not only come because I was a talented volleyball player, but because I was, like she was, a smart, talented, young Black girl. They don't like that in this country. But guess what? My mom, my mom's mom, and my mom's mom have never given a darn, a dadgum F about what they want, because we have all known or come to know at some point in our lives that we belong to God, and therefore we are who he says we are, not what anybody else has to say about us, including those people who look like us. I'm getting off track, but you understand where I am coming from. So once I'm having all of these realizations as I'm going through my life in college, and I start to realize this was a learned trait of survival that my mom was displaying when she was protecting me or coming to handle conflicts for me, I was like, okay, that means I have permission to handle conflict in the way that makes me feel most comfortable, or the way that I know I can do most often. And 9 times out of 10, most conflicts that I would fear, that I would come a breath with, didn't even take place, because fortunately or unfortunately for me, I kind of have this knee-jerk reaction in my face when you say something that is not appropriate or not right, you know? And so if you say something very suspicious about anything, it doesn't even have to be about me. And let's hope for your sake it is not about anyone that I love. Because if you do that in my presence, you know, the little TikTok trend that would go around that was like, looks like a cinnamon roll, could kill you. See, the problem is it just looks like a killing cinnamon roll. That's what happened. And I make no apologies, because I don't know what provoked you to open your mouth and spew such nonsense. Why would you do that? It is just not in me. And because I was overthinking if I could handle conflict at all, I didn't even realize that because of the way that I was brought up, aside from my mother, like in her style of handling conflict, I was raised with honor and integrity. So if you say something that is disrespectful, that is inappropriate, that is misogynistic, that is generally not valuing the human life for exactly what it is, a life that God sent his son to die for, my ears are on 10, okay? And so sometimes when I finally started to come out of that period of being at Portland in general, and I started to calm down and relinquish that anxiety, sometimes I would say things before I thought, and I realized my mother was right. Like I didn't ever have a problem with conflict or confrontation. And I'm not telling you that because I'm saying that is your experience. It very well might be that you didn't even realize you knew how to handle conflict better than you're giving yourself credit for, because you're taking in too much other information. I'm guilty of that. I understand. It's hard. It's hard to adjust to a new reality once you become an adult and have to bear the responsibilities for everything that relates to you, including your emotional health, your emotional safety, your spiritual, your physical safety, your rent, all of your responsibilities, all of those things. It takes a very large toll on you, right? And so my point is in saying this is that when I finally decided to stop overthinking, my ability to handle conflict just kind of rose to the top, and I did what I had been taught, which the first thing I had been taught was to think. So oftentimes, and I didn't realize this until I started to make a shift really into adulthood and out of like, ooh, I'm a teeny bopper, I'm playing college volleyball, like, oh my gosh. It was like, no. It's a little more serious than that, right? When I made the shift out of that, I started to realize that I had been trained by my grandmother to THINK, okay? So when you say something with the intention of getting a rise out of me, my first response is not a response. It's silence. And I have learned that when somebody has an ulterior motive in conflict or confrontation, and you meet that ulterior motive, like the Bible says, a soft answer turns away wrath, with silence, which really at first was just me thinking, that person is like, and then they start telling you what they really meant, why they really meant it, embarrassing themselves. And then I started to realize I don't ever have to say anything again. I literally don't ever have to say anything again if I don't want to, because who really is in control of this situation right now? And I'm not talking about person to person. I'm talking about up there. Okay. So much of that has helped me to realize that most of these battles that I thought I had to fight, I don't have to fight. People will make a jerk, a butthole, a whatever of themselves all by themselves if you let them. Engaging is not always the answer in confrontation. And I think that goes for the scenario that I was just explaining, where it's you and another person or you and another group of people, and also you to you. You don't always have to engage with the thoughts that consume you about the fear of confrontation or about the possibilities of things coming and going in a way that is not in your favor or that is in your favor. I'm not saying it's not that you shouldn't plan if that helps you, because it does help me, but you have to know and draw the boundary line. But you don't always have to engage with the idea of confrontation, especially if your idea of confrontation is not fully formed and you have not experienced all of the base that you need to experience. I think you will know in and of yourself when you have gone through enough scenarios to know these are the similar spirits that I seem to see coming at me in certain times of my life. Because if you believe and you really walk with Christ, you will begin to notice that sometimes conflict is not about conflict. It's about seeing if you will be willing to come off the track of your belief and your faith in God. And so that also really helped me to try to compartmentalize and categorize my experiences with conflict and confrontation, because it's really oftentimes 98% of the time the conflict that is being had has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the person that is coming from me. And sometimes it's not a person, it's a spirit. You have to know that, right? We could talk about that at another time. It's kind of hard to explain, but like we could talk about that if you guys were interested in that. But the 2% that it was about me, it was often coming from me. Like I was going to tell someone, hey, I am sorry about this, and this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this better. Or I would just fix it and show up differently in whatever situation that was taking place in my life, because I have no problem being wrong. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people do have problems with that. So then, when you don't have a problem with that, that creates a problem, and that can be a conflict. Isn't that stupid? You guys, the stories, the things that I have experienced, the things that I have learned, like even before college and then also in college, about the trivial nature of sometimes the human need, or I feel like it's a intrusive thought to create a problem where one doesn't need to exist, because you won't address the things that you have done in your life that you don't like or you make yourself subject to. Like the projection that exists under the guise of conflict or confrontation that is coming onto you, that has absolutely nothing to do with you, is on another level. It's really insane. It's insane. And so I want you to take that away. Take away that you probably already know how to do it. I bet you're Badensky, you probably already know how to do it. And if you are genuinely trying to solve the problem, there is probably not going to be a lot of conflicts that you can't face naturally. But you have to understand that most people aren't trying to solve the problem. They're trying to create one. You already know how to do it. If you're trying to solve the problem, you're really not going to have a lot of negative confrontation to deal with unless you try to tell this person that wants to create the problem that they need to solve the problem. They don't want to do that. They want to be the problem. So my advice to you, don't interact with this person. You know what I'm saying? Don't. Because it is a distraction. Okay? It is here to take your peace, to make you angry, to make you feel anxious. Just don't. Know that there are people who are literally in confrontation for the chaos. Okay? And confrontation, conflict is the way that life flows, but you don't have to live and die by the side of it. You don't. You actually do not have to subscribe to any of that. And when you don't subscribe to it, that is also going to bring more people into your life who are going to try to rile that out of you. I'm just warning you. So don't be fooled if you choose the calm path. Trying to make peace with everyone. I don't know where that is. Does Paul say that? I think Paul says that. It's on the screen. You know what I'm saying? But do not get caught up in the disguise of confrontation. It's literally just conversation. It's just conversation. It's misunderstandings. It's trying to gain an understanding. It's lack of knowledge. It's trying to expand the knowledge in its most genuine, regular form. That's exactly what it is. And if it is not that, that is not where you need to be speaking. You need to go. Okay? That's my advice. All right? That's it. Okay. You probably already know how to do it. You got to know whether or not the person that you are interacting with wants to solve the problem, or if they don't. And if they don't want to solve the problem, they don't exist. Okay. You can still love them and not acknowledge their tomfoolery. And if not acknowledging their tomfoolery means not interacting with them outside of necessary interactions, that's exactly what you do. Right. Okay. So yes, those would be my 2 pieces of advice. Go back and look at what you would do. Go ask your parents and say, like, if I ever got in fights with my friends when I was 5 or 6, do you remember how I would? And they probably are going to remember. And sometimes you just need to be reminded of who you are, not reinvent the whole wheel, especially when it comes to conflict and confrontation, because I believe that God equipped us to handle that, because it was never meant to be a stalemate. Conflict was never meant to be a stalemate. Confrontation was never meant to be a stalemate. It was meant to be a bridge that was built upward and moved onward to help further edify the body of Christ, and of course, who God is in all his righteousness and glory and majesty. So that's what I would say. Okay, don't make it difficult. Take it from me. Please don't overthink it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it, and then let yourself react and see how that goes. And if it doesn't go great, that's fine. Now you have the ability to learn and reevaluate. It's better to do something that you don't like and learn from it than to cram yourself down into this overwhelming hole of overthinking and not live your life in between the natural conflicts that you are always going to have in your life. Okay? Confrontation is not the big bad wolf. The way that you think about it is. And I did not come up with that. I just reminded you. Okay? I'm kicking my feet. All right, I'm going to go. Ilya Millie. Don't ever do that again. Don't. Anyways, okay, I love you guys so much. Prayerfully, we don't have one of those incidents anymore. Thank you very much. Okay, that's it. Love you. Bye.